Hey everybody, it's Eric from the Mature Minded Gamers Group. Tonight, me and Will are going to bring you our latest Trek podcast covering Discovery Season 3, Episode 3, People of Earth.
Hey, everybody.
So, Will, we are missing Brad again, unfortunately, this week. Hopefully, he'll be able to join us next week. What do you think of this episode first? Your just a real quick initial thoughts.
I liked it for the most part. It didn't draw me and pull at any heartstrings up until I take that back. It didn't do anything for me up until the end, which we'll get to. How
Okay.
about you?
Yeah, it was a little slow. I felt like it filled in a bunch of holes, but it also left me with a bunch of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we'll get more
Yep.
into that. Um, I,
Absolutely.
I, I think the season's been solid, and 3 fit right in just fine. It didn't disappoint, but I definitely know what you mean by it didn't really do a lot for you until the end. All right, so let's get started here. The dilithium we learn dried up before the explosion, which I don't think we knew that before this, did we?
No, they just talked about it just exploding. I thought it just kind of like snap and gone.
And they made it. I can't remember if they gave the exact date, but I think they said like 100 years before the Great Burn, it dried up. So the lithium deposits were just ran out. And they also made the reference that the Federation tried different methods of transportation, but it failed. So we talked briefly that the Romulans were using a different method, and that makes me wonder why the Federation didn't just kind of adapt that. Is that something that you think they couldn't learn technology wise?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I remember Brad was saying something about how it wasn't dilithium they were using, but I don't know much about it to really tell you if exactly what happened. Because we kind of heard that the Federation would kaput, but we haven't heard anything about any of the other races, like the Vulcans. More specifically on the races. I know the Vulcans are part of the Federation, but we haven't heard anything about the Romulans, the Klingons, the Ferengi, any of those.
Right. I've been curious about that as well. I've been waiting for the moment when we like get the layout of the land, like who's who's running the sectors and who's like the big power now, and starting to wonder if we're ever going to get that. Maybe they're going to play it off as every starship had a little bit of dilithium and it blew them all up, because we actually seen a very devastating shot of a bunch of ships just blowing up when they talked about the Great Burn explosion. And so it happened suddenly. It wasn't like you know, a one time, like a slow process, which Stamets even referenced as being weird. Like that's not really possible. So yeah. And so we get some more conspiracy theories about if this was done intentionally or if it was just something that happened.
Yeah, it seemed like that was actually brought up a couple of times, and not just once.
Right. So we also see Burnham working as a courier with Book, and we hear many stories of them doing this. They talk about, hey, let's do what we did here on this planet. They all
Uh-huh.
had different names and stuff like that. So I have a theory on that, but I'm going to talk about one more thing real quick. Lieutenant Nilsson is on the bridge now. She's the blonde with kind of the messy hair a little bit. That is actually the actress that played Arium, the
Oh,
cyborg.
really?
Right, yeah, without the cyborg gear on, which I thought was really cool. I didn't know that for a while. But I was looking at, I think, her Twitter or something, and yeah. And so yeah, so that's her. And a really interesting part is she was actually in the command chair at one point before Saru came back on the bridge. I think it was when the Raiders were coming into Earth or something, and they had to do a red alert or whatever. She actually jumps out of the command chair and lets Saru go back in it. But so she's up there, high ranking, which I
Right.
find really interesting. I don't know how they're going to play that off, because as far as I know, we never really seen her until all of a sudden now. But yeah, anyways, so we get all that, and we get Admiral. Let me back up a little bit. So Burnham gets on the ship, hugs, kisses, love, but everything seems a little off with her. And they play that out through the whole first half of the episode. Did you notice that?
And it wasn't just the first half; it was up until the very end too.
Yeah, like, well, at the very end, yeah, you're right, it was. But she happens to mention to the crew that she got a message from an Admiral Tully, and it was a transmission that was coming from Earth. saying that all the Federation is welcome. Come here, we'll join forces basically. And so that sends them on their mission to head back to Earth. And we talked about this last week, Will. Is the spore drive functional? Is something they're going to use? Well, they didn't seem to be bothered by it one bit, did they?
Not at all.
They just spun that bad boy up and went right to Earth. So
something that we didn't talk about, but I think is important at the beginning is when Burnham's like, it's not my spot. Saru, you're the one who's led this team, this crew here, and you have the right to be the captain. And then he gave that little speech about, hey, we're the Discovery. And that's something I talked about last week was, that's the name of the ship. That's the name of the series from the beginning of the Federation till the end of the Federation. We're discovering new grounds. He kind of alludes to a kind of little conversation like that. And then at the end, everybody's like, "Aye, Captain." I thought that was great.
I agree. I thought that was a really good scene too. And it kind of, again, played into her changing because she didn't want, anything to do with that. You can tell she didn't even know if she wanted to stay on the ship, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we get them, we get a really good conversation between Tilly and Burnham, where they basically talk about, everything that's happened and how much they missed each other. And Tilly says, you've already let us all go. And so Tilly immediately notices that Burnham's changed. And then we also see Book and Giorgio meeting on the transporter for the first time. And you can tell this is kind of like kind of like the mom introducing herself to the boyfriend, right?
Right.
And really like quizzing him. And, it was a really funny scene. And Book's like, "Oh, yeah, Burnham told me about you."
Did you catch up on the part that he was like, "Oh, we're not boyfriend and girlfriend. She's not my girlfriend. We've never," and he's like, "I'm not going to talk about this."
Right. And they kind of had a couple moments where
They
they kind
did.
of looked at each other and like almost like I don't know what's going on there.
Exactly. And I'm curious, we've got this year. Do you think they did that so they can release like graphic novels and comic books about the missing year?
Nope, we are going to get shows that cover that because the very first episode was a part 1 and the second and third episode have not been a part 2 yet. So we are going to get a part 2 that's going to cover at least part of their year together, maybe the whole thing, who knows.
You think so?
Oh, for sure. Otherwise they wouldn't have named that part 1, I don't think. So I don't know when we'll get that, but I think it'll be this season. And I also, man, I'm not sold just from them talking about all their adventures together. I'm not sold that it's only been a year. I don't know if maybe they've got some kind of time manipulation ability. I don't know. I'm just not sold that it's only been a year. I'm still not sold that Burnham doesn't have a kid either. Though it's weird. Like the way their relationship works, I don't know. I was starting to wonder if maybe she was pregnant before with Tyler's kid. Maybe before they did the whole jump thing. Do you think that's possible?
Maybe. I don't know. Like I guess I never really even thought about that. I never picked up on any kind of clues or anything, no hints that I noticed about any kind of information about a kid.
I don't know why I keep going back there, and I'm probably wrong. With all the adventures they've went on, you wouldn't think she would want to do that while she was pregnant. But I don't know. It just feels there's something there. I just don't know what it is yet. And just her whole appearance, and she's totally changed. Like she cares less about duty and more about herself or family. Maybe that happens when you have kids. And so I don't know. I'm still kind of wondering if they're going to pull something like that.
Well, but Giorgio kind of even says she's got her taste of freedom and being able to go and do what she wants to do, and she's not restricted by the Federation rules and everything. I think she's realized what it's like to become more human and less Vulcan, because I think that's what we kind of saw in the first 2 seasons was how she was raised in Vulcan, her relationship with her brother and her dad, and how it was all about logic and doing the right thing, and Starfleet was the right position based on knowledge and logic and all that. But now, because she's basically being able to go off of whatever her heart tells her she wants to do, she's torn between the 2 worlds of duty and logic versus emotion and freedom. I think that's where she's kind of torn between the 2, is the 2 worlds, the 2 halves of who she was.
Yeah, I mean that's the most likely reason. You're right, but I want to keep throwing one more accusation out there that I thought of, or one more crazy theory. What
Okay.
if time is done completely different? What if they're in a different dimension and time is completely different? So that's something that Trek doesn't usually talk too much about. But like how we base time off here is how, revolutions around the sun. And so technically that would be different for every sector you went in. But you just kind of assumed that
Oh,
Starfleet
oh my
kept
God.
kept the same time, right? But what if that's changed? So what if maybe it has been a year by some kind of calculation, but really it's been longer? And
I think
so,
you may be onto something there.
well, I started thinking about that because there was a couple conversations that Burnham had, and one of the things that struck me out was when they were going to Earth. One of the things that struck out to me, or stood out to me, excuse me, was when they were going to Earth. Burnham says something along the lines of, "I've never been to this Earth,"
Earth. Yes.
and
Yes.
so
And I'm wondering when you said that, what if they're not even in the same time? You're talking about time wise, but what if they're not even in the same universe?
right, like they went to a different dimension, or
Right.
yeah,
Just like before.
right, and that's why everything's so different, perhaps. And so, yeah,
Wow, man. Wow.
I have lots of theories. I love the way that they're hanging this stuff out there because I love to make to make guesses and stuff. So, anyways,
Right.
let's get back on
Well,
track.
and that tree was still there, but it was
Right,
massive.
that's true. That's
Oh
true. But
man.
you're gonna have some things that are the same. But you know what I almost did? I didn't have time. I wanted to get an old picture of Starfleet Academy and
Yeah.
zoom out and see if everything like looked similar as a layout. Now I know it's in the future, so things could change anyways. But I thought maybe like the bridge was on the other side or something. Something that would be an obvious change.
Hmm.
But I didn't have time to do that. But okay, so going back, where do we? Let's see. When we ended, we were talking the Spore Drive. We mentioned that as being back, no problem using it. So this does give Discovery a huge advantage in the systems. And Book and Burnham talked about it because it sounded like they'd gotten into a bunch of trouble in the sector that they're currently in. And Burnham referenced it a couple times. Well, this is your chance to, you know, get a clean slate and start over, basically. And
Hmm.
so I think that this is going to be Discovery's big advantage is that, they're able to travel long distances apparently at a whim, and apparently it's fine. It doesn't seem to hurt Stamets anymore, maybe. We haven't seen a side effect. And speaking of side effects, or not Arium, but Detmer seemed to not be affected at all. Did you notice that? There was one little moment where she kind of shot back to some battle fatigue or something.
Right. And then she never really even we didn't even like that was what the whole second episode was about. And then, we get nothing here.
Yeah, there was one moment where she kind of hesitated on Saru's orders to move the ship into the firing range of the Earth Defense Force. That was really the only thing we've seen to reference that. She seemed fine besides that. Hey, guess what, everybody? Brad has joined us. Brad, welcome.
Hey.
We're just talking about how the ship made it back to Earth using the Spore Drive, Brad, and how it didn't seem to be an issue at all for them to use it, nor did it really seem to affect Stamets. Now, we've talked about several things. Is there anything you'd like to talk about that happened up until this point, Brad?
Yeah, I actually wrote down a quote that I actually laughed out loud at when I'm trying to think of who said it originally, but somebody said, that's unbelievable. And then Giorgio says out loud, that's weird for somebody who says a man who jumps through mushroom space.
Right,
Like
that was good.
that was probably my favorite quote from this whole episode. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out, and just that I'm like really excited for this whole season. This has been a great episode so far. So anyway, continue on. Don't let me.
So you just missed our conversation. I think that time could possibly be traveling at different speeds in this dimension. This could also be a completely different universe or dimension. I think that's what's happening here, and I think that's why, even though Burnham says it's only been a year, they seem to have done a lot more in that year. And I still think Burnham has a kid or something else going on.
And I think it's not only a different, maybe time is moving at a different speed, but maybe they're actually in this different universe. And one of the things that Eric mentioned earlier was that Burnham, one of the quotes that Burnham says is, "I've never been to this Earth." So I think she already knows that they're in a different dimension.
Yeah. When she said that, in my mind, I thought to myself, yeah, these guys are going to think that. So I kind of expected you guys to have that. I thought in my mind, I think she's talking about the fact that she's in an Earth post burn and how, like, we're not able to get from A to B as quickly out in space right now because we don't have dilithium. So I think what she's saying is that this Earth 1,000 years in the future is dramatically different than the Earth I left 1,000 years ago.
But she said she's never been able to communicate with Earth or never been able to visit because it's too far. So how does she
Right.
know any of that information?
Well, that's exactly what she's saying. She's saying, I've not been to this Earth, meaning that like so much has changed that it's not going to be the place that I remember. But I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I'm just saying that's how I interpreted it.
I am excited to see. I love the questions that are being brought to us. All right, so the ship makes it to Earth, and there's some new force field technology up, and several ships come charging towards Discovery, and they are powering up weapons. They get held, and it is the United Earth Defense Force. So this is not the Federation. This is definitely not the Earth that we knew. And they immediately beam themselves aboard after a quick conversation and just start inspecting the ship. And we meet, I think, we meet a new character who I think is going to be obviously a big factor in season 3 here. And she quickly shows her skills and capabilities in front of Tilly and Stamets, and kind of, I think kind of embarrassed Tilly a little bit about how smart and capable she was. And Tilly did her normal Tilly thing where she tries to mouth off but really doesn't mouth off, which I thought was pretty funny. What'd you guys think about that whole interaction?
Well, at this point, like I did not expect that character to be what it panned out to be that we'll find later in the episode. That's about as coy as I can be with that. But I thought that that particular character was a little annoying, and I was totally on Tilly's side and about like, yeah, who does she think she is, asking all those questions. So definitely identified with her in that. The Earth Defense Force was a little more aggressive than I think um, I was expecting. I guess I have a hard time believing that Earth turned into an isolationist sort of planet and whatnot, especially it being the original home of the Federation. So I'm interested to hear how they got to that point. But yeah, it's interesting. The entire planet, like shield system, was neat.
Well, I think they kind of told us how they got to that. People were just coming in and raiding their dilithium.
Oh, sure, but that's still they're I don't know, in my mind it doesn't resonate with the Earth and the Federation that I remembered. But then again, none of this is that way. So I mean, what I'm saying is this is out of character, and I'm interested to hear more about like the backstory of how they got there, more than just people were rating us for dilithium. I don't know. I feel like there's more there. Well, there is definitely more to that story.
I felt like the interaction with this new young lass was, I guess, to me, it was kind of trying to show how smart the future is for the people who can actually study and I don't know how how to word this, but I think it was just trying to show how the future has kind of changed the human species. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the whole thing with the Earth having all this dilithium, how come that didn't burn? How come that didn't explode? If they have all this dilithium, how come there was no explosion from that regard?
Well, they said something later on in the episode where they asked why the Discovery didn't go up in the burn, and they said something about not using their warp drive at the time.
Well,
And
that's something that he made up. That's something that I think that Saru just kind of made up on the spot.
well, but the Earth Defense Force kind of accepted that as an answer right off the bat. So like, it makes me wonder if maybe there's not some, like maybe the crystals had to be in the, recrystallization chamber or whatever. You know what I mean? Like maybe there was some reason that some qualifying factor for.
I think it all stems to something that Eric was talking about earlier, was the fact that, something that was kind of alluded to this entire episode, was the fact that it was some sort of sabotage or attack or weaponized something that made it explode, and that it wasn't just dilithium just stopped working. It was some sort of sabotage.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, Brad. I think it had to be like processed dilithium, because otherwise they wouldn't be trading for it and using it. So like
Right.
it didn't blow up all the dilithium, because they did said, remember, Will, they did say earlier that they ran out of dilithium. I think they referenced like 150 years before the Great Burn. And
I
so
thought it
they
was
were
only like
trying,
10.
I can't remember the exact date, but they were trying to find a new method for transportation and they failed. So I'd brought up this, Brad. Why didn't they just use the Romulan warp?
The micro fissure, or the micro singularity. Well, I can't imagine. We haven't seen any Romulans yet, and I can't imagine they were really forthright with their technology.
Surely
So-
we've been able to like deconstruct that technology at this point, though.
Well, so we have to remember that like what's happening in Picard has happened in this reality. You know what I mean? Like we're seeing, hundreds of years after what happened in Picard happened here. So there may have been something dramatic that happened with the Romulans after that point, or something that may have made that not a possibility. I don't know. And maybe it still is. Maybe we'll run into something related to the Romulans in this new universe. But I mean, even if the Romulans were, able to solve their problem, I can't imagine that they would be, just the character of the Romulan in general. I can't imagine that they would have even at all assisted with this. So I don't know.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. In the Prime universe, or whatever this is called, did Romulus still explode?
Yes.
Okay. Has Vulcan still exploded?
No. Vulcan exploded in the Kelvin universe.
Okay, so I'm just making sure. So the Romulans, I'm sure, aren't the powerhouse they used to be, and they may be scattered and kind of dissipated over the course of the time when we were watching, since we're watching Picard. Because you don't see the Romulans are there, but it's not like they're like the powerhouse. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay, so we see Saru, Michael, and Captain Adaya, who's from the Earth Defense, and she's basically telling them about Wynn the Raiders. Wynn is the name apparently of the lead guy, who is in control of some raiders who are attacking Earth. And she also tells them that the Federation is no longer on Earth. They dissipated about I think she said 100 years ago or something. They left Earth, and so I found that interesting that they left Earth. So there was apparently something that tried to leave Earth to resettle somewhere. So I think that's what we're going to be in pursuit of for the rest of the season, is wherever they went. And we'll get to that a little bit more. But before too much more happens, the Raiders come knocking, and they want their dilithium. And the Earth Force threatens to shoot them out of the sky. And we see Michael and Book kind of go off on their own, which is very un-Michael-like. She doesn't talk to Saru or anybody else about it. They just hop in that ship and go out to do their thing. So again, we're getting more situations of Michael not being her normal self, being completely different. This was probably the biggest thing in the whole episode that really kind of showed it, I think. And even though everything worked out, that's what got her court-martialed back in 930 years ago or whatever, and got her in all that trouble from not following the rules. But anyways, so we see Saru. We talked about this a little bit briefly earlier before you got on, Brad. We see Saru move the ship in front of the Earth Defense's fire, and Damer, no, not Damer, Detmer, seems like she doesn't want to respond. She doesn't want to follow through with the orders. This is the first time we've seen her actually kind of have a little bit of what she had in the second episode, where she we called it like battle fatigue, or what's it called, PTSD.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And so this is the only part that really kind of showed up that could have been related to that, because we were wondering what was going on with her last episode. So what do you guys think of this? Is this something we're going to keep seeing from her?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's going to become either a major part of the story or it's going to be an episode centric.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get a character episode out of that. I mean, I think part of it comes from them crash landing on whatever planet it was that they ended up crash landing on, and that she feels personally responsible for the lives that were lost or the damage that was done.
I talked last week about maybe her having some of that from her time on the Shinzu when it first got wrecked and she was one of the survivors.
Mm-hmm.
That may be why it bothered her so much in that second episode when she crash landed. But
Maybe.
so Michael and Book go out to do their thing. They're talking back and forth. They reference a lot of different adventures they've had and things they've done to overcome the situation. And again, this kind of leads back to where I think time might be different. And I don't think you were on for this, Brad, but the very first episode was a part 1 episode, and we have not got a part 2 episode yet to follow up. So I think we're going to actually see the Michael and Book adventures a little bit more, maybe later this season. So we'll see what actually happened.
I've been reading some other commentary on that, and that's kind of exactly what I think the rest of people who do what we do think, is that part 2 episode could either be, some kind of mid-season something, or it may be a season finale sort of bookend for this entire, no pun intended there, some sort of like end of season, like cap, as to why they didn't tell the rest of that story. Because we know from listening to other things or reading other things that we know that Philippa Georgiou's got to end up back in the prime timeline. I shouldn't say prime timeline, back on the original timeline to be a part of the Section 31 show. So something's going to happen between now and the end of the season that's going to cause that, or something else crazy is going to happen there. There was another point I had there on why Discovery, or at least people from Discovery, had to end up back at least more in line with things, but I can't remember what that detail was. Anyway, point being is that we're going to get that part 2 before the end of this episode, before the end of this series. I mean,
there was some time that passed between when she came back and when she first came back to Discovery. I don't remember how much time it was, but she was like, "Oh, you're with, Section 31 now?" And so I didn't know if the show would just be showing that, because I for some reason in my head I was thinking it was like 6 months or something, but I may be wrong about the time frame on that. So I don't think she necessarily has to get back to that time frame, but maybe they will.
Yeah, for some reason I don't feel like this show is going to stay in the future. I mean, the show never really stayed in the past, hadn't stayed in the future. I think it's its own tale, and this is great. I don't think the ship's going to survive necessarily, but
maybe
I don't think we've got a series that's going to last more than 5 seasons. I think we've got another 2 seasons in the story of Discovery, and that's it.
You don't think they'll try to go for the full 7?
No.
5-year mission.
Maybe. I did read where they have more shows in the works, even more than what's been announced already. So, okay, let's get back on track. So they came up with a plan. They end up tricking the raider into lowering his shields, and they capture him and bring him onto the bridge for Saru and Captain Adema. And they have a little one-on-one, and Saru shows them what Federation diplomacy is all about. And they work out their differences, and they find out that this raider is actually a human from, was it Saturn?
Titan. But thanks to Georgiou for quickening diplomacy.
That's true. So, and we find out that, they were actually coming to Earth to try to get help, and Earth Defense blew up their ship, and so they thought they were by themselves, and so they end up coming to very quick terms and decide they're going to help each other. And even the Earth Defense lady compliments Saru on, his diplomacy and how well it worked. And so hopefully we're going to see a little bit of a turning of the page there, and maybe Earth Defense won't be so aggressive from now on. But that comes with them allowing the Discovery crew to beam down and visit Earth. And we get, I think it was 4 or 5 of them, of the bridge crew. None of the main characters. Michael didn't go. Saru didn't go, obviously, because he's not from Earth. But he obviously probably studied at the Academy, didn't he? I don't know if they've ever mentioned that. But
yeah, he did.
Yeah, but he doesn't go. Michael doesn't go down, and so we get Tilly and the rest of the bridge crew basically there on Earth. Oh, another thing, Brad, did you notice that Lieutenant Nilsson is the same actress that played Ariam? That the new blonde chick on the bridge with kind of the messy hair.
The one that was sitting in the captain's seat.
Oh
for
no,
a hot
I
minute?
did not catch that.
That is the same actress that
She looked
played.
familiar, but I did not catch that it was Arian's. Yeah, okay, cool.
Yep.
I'm down with that.
So I hope we get more story on her because, like Will just mentioned, she was in the captain's seat for a second when Saru was off the bridge. So she's high ranking, and so I hope we get more background on her. Plus, they just kind of threw her in there. I don't think they really gave us any details on her. But so anyway, so they're down there at Earth, and they mentioned how they've all been to this tree and studied under it while they were at Starfleet, and it's a good bonding experience. What were your guys' takeaways so far on all this stuff? Do you think it's the same Earth?
Oh, we're gonna differ here. That's for sure.
What do you say, Brad?
I think it. I think it is. It's the same Earth. It's just evolved. It's just whatever Earth looks like after the burn, after the fall of the Federation, after the burn. This is what Earth is.
I think Eric could be onto something, as far as like with this crazy conspiracy theories here. But part of me wants to believe that yes, this is the new Earth. But I feel like at the end of this season, I think that the Earth Defense League is going to, or Defense Force or whatever it is going to become home again for the Federation.
Ooh, I don't think they're gonna rejoin Earth, but maybe.
I think they will. Go ahead.
I think they got to find them first, and I think they're gonna already have something established. But I
that
don't
may
know
be
how.
the case, but I think that the Federation is going to go back to its roots and start from the beginning, or where they had started from, with new possibilities. I mean, I think. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think what we saw in the coming up section is going to play into that.
Yeah, I think they tease too much on that. I mean, are we to that point of the episode yet?
No, not quite. Let's talk about Stamets and Adara's little conversation they had. So they kind of bonded, which I thought was really nice. Very quick. Stamets says, "I've always been different," and that's Adara's like, "Well, I've been different my whole life." And they bond and they tell each other the truth. And so we learned that Adara is actually Admiral Tali, and that Adara has a Trill symbiote inside of her, even though she is a human. And so it's caused some issues, and we don't know a lot of the details yet, but she apparently tells Saru, who is telling Michael this, that she's having difficulty accessing the memories of the Admiral. And so I think we're going to slowly get this playing out through the whole season of her remembering more and more, perhaps.
I think it's going to become a race to find a compatible Trill. I don't think that what is her name? Adara? What's her name?
Adara.
I don't think Adara is going to last long as far as like living as a human with a Trill inside of her.
She did not look like Riker, though. She didn't look like Riker in that one episode where he's just like sweating and like looks like he's about to die at any moment. She looked like she was handling it just fine.
I don't know. I mean, maybe, but
that was the thing.
Because of her young body, I don't know, because she's so young.
You might be right. Well, they may have to find a Trill just to get their memories out. Maybe that's how they'll do it. But I don't know. I kept thinking about that Riker episode. I was like, well, she must be adapting better than Riker did.
Mm-hmm.
In that same conversation, Saru is basically talking to Michael, and he tells her that I wanted you to be my number one, but you have to be, you have to tell me what's really going on here. And she just kind of doesn't really say a lot. Just says she's changed, and it's going to take time for her to get back to herself. And so I think, I mean, she said she was going to do it. I think, isn't that what you guys pulled from that conversation? She's going to be the number one, but she may not be the same.
Yep.
So I think again, this is going to be a thing that plays out the whole season of her, and we're going to get more and more about what happened to her to make her change. But she goes, and we see Michael and Book have a nice little goodbye, and again they have this moment where they kind of look at each other and you're like, are they going to kiss? What's going on here? But they don't. So I'm going to throw out another conspiracy. I think he's in love with this cat, and he's going to marry, or he is married to the cat, perhaps. Possible.
You're ridiculous. She is a queen, though, but
All right, so
maybe
That
Maybe
one's
he's
a
the
little
shapeshifter.
that one's a little out there. I know. I was just kind of it's more of a joke, but he does have this weird relationship with his cat, and even Burnham makes fun of him at some point earlier in the episode.
Right.
So Book goes out on his own. He's in this new quadrant where he's not wanted. So he gets kind of a fresh start. They kind of mentioned that earlier in the episode. So I mean, I definitely think they're going to be running into each other. I don't think we're going to have many episodes without Book. Several.
I hope not. I like his character.
I do too. He's definitely unique. I can't wait to see more about him. And his connection with the animals and the plants and everything. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really interested to see what's going on. All right, guys, what would you rate this episode?
I think I'm going to give this one a solid 8 out of 10, which I think is probably the highest episode or the highest rating I've given an episode so far. So maybe a 9. I don't know. I really liked this episode.
I found this episode kind of slow, and really the best part was really at the end. I'm gonna rate this probably one. It was good though. I'm so probably gonna rate it a 7.
I'm gonna stick. I've gave the first and second episodes both an 8. I'm gonna stick with an 8 on this one. All right, everybody, that wraps up our podcast. Thanks for checking us out. Don't forget to hit that follow and like button, and have yourself a great day.